Welcome to Psychic Insights, where pop culture meets higher consciousness and the tea is always a little bit mystical. I'm Robin Richardson, your psychic girlfriend, and around here we don't just watch the drama unfold, we read the energy behind it, whether it's celebrity scandals, reality TV, chaos, or true crime with a twist. I'm tuning in to bring you the intuitive scoop the headlines miss. So buckle up, because your aura's about to get entertained. Welcome back to my channel. It's Robin Richardson, your psychic girlfriend. And I just saw a notice on Echoes' channel that our friend and former attorney of Laura Owens, David Gingras, is closing his office. Finito, no more law practice. So, and those of you who don't know who David Gingras is, he's become one of the most infamous and recognizable attorneys in this case. And whether you agree with his legal strategy, his personality, he became part of a story that captured all of our attention. And so, after 2 decades, his announcement was, after 2 decades in Phoenix, Gingras Law Office has permanently closed. And David states that he's no longer practicing law and is beginning a new chapter outside of Arizona. As always, on this channel, we will begin with publicly available information, and then I'll do something different. Instead of, analyzing court filings and stuff, we're going to ask some human questions. Like, what energy surrounds this major life transition? What might spirit be showing about this ending? And finally, if David ever happens to see this video, what message I would genuinely want to leave him with. But before we begin, I want to make something clear as usual. The factual portions of this episode are based on publicly available information, and the intuitive portions are my own spiritual guidance and interpretations using Lenormand cards, my spidey senses, and, just my personal opinions. They aren't statements of fact about David Gingras in any way, shape, or form, or anyone else's private thoughts, intentions, or motivations. It's for entertainment purposes, right? So let's begin. So who is David Gingras? Well, David Gingras practiced law in Arizona for about 2 decades, as he likes to remind everyone. And most people watching this channel know him because he represented Laura Owens during one of the most closely watched legal sagas in recent memory. I like being dramatic, don't you? And they included the proceedings related to Clayton Echard, the former bachelor. And his support and advocacy generated strong opinions. Some viewers respected his willingness to vigorously defend his client, while other people, most of us, disagreed with aspects of his legal strategy and his public arguments, and his threats against Dave Neal and others. So, wherever you fall on this, it became undeniable that he was a significant player in this case, and it continues to be discussed. And we're still discussing him, apparently. His recent announcement says that his law office is permanently closed effective July 1st, and he's no longer practicing law, that he's moving forward into a new chapter outside of Arizona, and that announcement got me interested and curious. Because whenever someone walks away from a career they've built over decades and fought vigorously about Rule 26 and others, there's usually more happening beneath the surface that the public can see. So I sat with questions, sat with cards, and at first I picked Bouquet and Cross in my spread. I'll show you the other cards as we go along. And this doesn't speak of failure. It speaks of someone who has had some recognition, built a respected career, and accomplished some meaningful things. Okay, we can agree that is likely, right? But also carried a tremendous amount of weight along the way. And the cross often represents burdens that that aren't always visible to people. And it's the responsibility we all carry. It's the sacrifice no one applauds. It's the emotional cost of a life path. And reading these together, I found myself wondering whether David had reached a point where the burden simply outweighed the rewards. Not because one event necessarily forced him there, but because of years of carrying that weight eventually led him to ask a different question. What do I want the rest of my life to look like? I think that's fair, right? Then we had the we have the scythe, the house, and the tree. Okay, so if you've been following along, and I apologize for my nasty nail, I'm getting a manicure tomorrow. And this was the strongest combination of the cards that I have picked. The scythe is decisiveness. It doesn't hesitate. So once he made that decision, it was made. The house represents what we've built, and the tree represents something deeply rooted, something cultivated over many years. And to me, this feels less like an impulsive decision or a reaction and more like somebody consciously choosing to cut away a long-established identity. And that's never easy for anyone. But when you've spent decades introducing yourself as an attorney, an internet attorney, freedom of speech attorney, your profession becomes woven into who you are. And leaving that behind requires a lot of courage. So if you've been someone that has had a long career in something, you could probably relate, especially those of you that are retiring. Okay, and then we have the coffin and the stork. Okay, the coffin isn't always about physical death, but very often it represents grief, closure. I find it really interesting that these two are together, or an ending of one chapter so that another can begin. All right. And the stork follows immediately afterward, bringing movement, transition to a new life. So this makes sense. And many of you know that David has recently experienced a heartbreaking loss of his wife. And I really want to be gentle and careful here because the cards cannot tell us why someone made a personal decision, but knowing that that profound loss is a part of his life story, I can't help but wonder whether it changed how he viewed time, purpose, and what he wanted next in his next chapter to look like. And to me, it just kind of came to me as sort of a tear in the vortex kind of thing where he, I think he got a glimpse of who his identity is now and what his identity could be. Because sometimes grief doesn't simply take something away. Sometimes it rearranges things and rearranges our priorities. And these cards don't tell me that this was the reason he closed his practice, but it does suggest someone who has been deeply transformed by endings and who is now moving towards something different. And that ending too could be like he's been fighting the bar and other issues in his life. All right, so it makes a lot of sense to me. Then we have the bear on Hulu. No, we have the bear, we have the garden, and we have the dog. All right. If anybody's been watching The Bear is filmed here in Chicago. We love The Bear over here. Okay. All right. So I don't see retirement in the traditional sense, because the bear still carries authority, leadership, wisdom, influence, and garden expands that influence outward into the community, and dog speaks of loyalty, trusted relationships, and genuine connections. And if I were reading this without knowing anything about David, I would actually see someone who still has something meaningful to contribute. And that could be a lot of things. And if I didn't know David, it could be teaching, mentoring, consulting, and writing, maybe helping younger professionals avoid mistakes and navigate difficult ethical questions. But this energy seems less adversarial and more collaborative. So I'm hoping that David has really learned something about himself and is using that for the betterment. Then the final were clouds and mountain. And it is acknowledging that the transitions aren't necessarily easy. And the clouds tell me that the path isn't completely clear yet. But because of these cards, it could be there's uncertainty with him, a lot of questioning, moments of wondering whether it was the right decision. And the mountains remind us that rebuilding takes time. And the progress with him could be slower than expected, but slow doesn't mean it's the incorrect path. It just means it's slower. And sometimes the most enduring transformations happen one deliberate step at a time. Okay, so the one thing that really surprised me about this spread and this reading was I didn't see destruction, I didn't see revenge, and I didn't see someone whose life is over. I saw a completion of an identity. It was an ending that had to happen. And the possibility, which I'm all about, love possibility, of reinvention. So whether you liked David, agreed with David, disagreed with David, every one of us reaches a moment where life asks us to become someone new. And that invitation can be both beautiful and frightening. So David, if you ever watch this video and it happens to find you, I simply will say this to you. I genuinely hope you find peace. And I hope this next chapter brings you purpose, fulfillment, and opportunities to contribute in ways that are constructive for yourself and for others. And whatever lessons these past years have held, I hope they become wisdom rather than bitterness. And I hope you discover work that allows your experience to help people in meaningful ways. Sometimes our greatest contribution doesn't come from continuing a path that we've always known, and sometimes it definitely comes from having the courage to build an entirely new one. Life has a remarkable way of surprising us when we're willing to let go of an old identity. I sincerely wish you well, because I do feel like it's time for reinvention for you. And for everyone watching this reading isn't just about David. It's about every one of us, because there will come a time when we have to ask ourselves, what chapter has run its course? What identity am I still holding on to because it's familiar? And what might become possible if I had the courage to begin again? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Remember to be kind. As always, I thank you for joining me, and I will see you in the next one.